Dilly's Sacrifice by Rosie Goodwin. Narrated by Charlie Sanderson. Prologue. November 1900. Oh, me own darling, is there no other way? The anguish in Fergal's voice brought tears to Dilly's eyes as she wrapped the newly born babe in a shawl and shook her head. You know the answer to that right enough, she answered, more sharply than she had intended. It was a discussion they'd had many times over the last month, and now that the time had come, she would not swerve from her promise. How can I? She asked herself, as the child settled into the crook of her arm. I'm sorry, love, she muttered then, as guilt, sharp as a knife, sliced through her very soul. She, of all people, knew that her husband blamed himself for what she was about to do, and that it was tearing him apart. Once this little one is delivered to its new home, we needn't put Declan, Cian, Seamus and Neve into the orphanage, she said wearily. At least then, we'll have the money to send them to your family in Dublin, until I start work. In no time, we'll have saved enough to fetch them home. But it's like selling her own flesh and blood. He choked. She gulped. You know that's not true, Fergal. I've only agreed to accept enough to cover the children's fares to Ireland. In this one will never want for anything. She'll live in the lap of luxury and never know what it is to go hungry. Unlike the others, you mean? A note of bitterness had crept into his voice now. She laid the child gently on the lumpy old sofa, then hurried across to him and gently took his hands. She was still weak from giving birth, and felt far from well, yet she could still put him first. Fergal Carey was the love of her life, and had been ever since the day she had first clapped eyes on him. Stop blaming yourself, she urged softly. What happened to you was an accident. Until then you were a good provider, and would have gone on being so. A lock of Fergal's straight black hair slipped across his forehead as his head drooped. Freeing one of his hands, he thumped at his useless legs. Why did this have to happen? I'm no good to man or beast as I am now. How do you think it makes me feel, seeing you have to do everything for me as well as work yourself almost to death? Why, I sometimes think it would have been better if that
Sample complete. Ready to continue?